Good morning, Bible class, and welcome back. Have you ever been really angry with someone? Perhaps you were so angry with someone that you just felt that you wanted to hit them over the head with the frying pan and be done with it. And then you catch yourself on and remember that killing someone usually isn't the best idea. But that's a good thought to have, because you shouldn't kill anyone out of anger. And that's a little bit about what we're going to be thinking about today. It's a feeling that we all experience at some point weekly, if not daily, if not hourly. And Jesus pushes us further on this issue of anger. And he challenges us not only on the sinfulness of murder, but also on the sinfulness of anger itself. So let's have a little look at the next part of the Sermon on the Mount as we discover the many sides of anger. We're following on from what Mark and Yvonne have talked about in Matthew chapter 5, and today we're going to be reading from verse 21 to 26 if you want to follow it along with me. You have heard that it was said to our ancestors, "Do not murder, and whoever murders will be subject to judgment." But I tell you, everyone who is angry with his brother or sister will be subject to judgment. Whoever insults his brother or sister will be subject to the court. Whoever says, "You fool," will be subject to hellfire. So if you are offering your gift on the altar, and there you remember that your brother or sister has something against you, leave your gift there in front of the altar. First go and be reconciled with your brother or sister, and then come and offer your gift. Reach a settlement quickly with your adversary while you're on the way with him to the court, or your adversary will hand you over to the judge, and the judge to the officer, and you will be thrown into prison. Truly I tell you, you will never get out of there until you have paid the last penny. So in this passage, Jesus speaks to us about anger, and we'll see three sides of anger in this passage. First, we see that anger can be evil. Verse 21 to 22. Jesus says in these verses, "You have heard that it was said, 'Do not murder.' But I will tell you, everyone who is angry with his brother or sister will be subject to judgment." There was no doubt among the people Jesus was talking to that murder was evil. But Jesus introduces us to this new concept that anger can also be evil. And this would probably have surprised a lot of people, and it probably surprises many people today. We have no problem understanding that murder is evil, sinful, and worthy of judgment. But to say that anger is worthy of judgment, well, I wonder, is Jesus taking this a little too far? Is he? He says, if you insult your brother or sister, you will be subject to the court, meaning you will be guilty. And then he says, whoever says "you fool" will be subject to hellfire. Now this term hellfire refers to a trash dump outside of Jerusalem that was continually burning. And Jesus said the judgment that we could experience if we give ourselves to anger and insulting could be like a continual fire that burns up trash. Just as murder is sinful because it's a physical violation of someone created in the image of God, so also insulting is sinful because it is a verbal violation of someone created in the image of God. Jesus didn't say that murder and anger were the same. He said that they were both worthy of judgment here. And Jesus points out that anger should not be overlooked as innocent. Our anger opens the door and allows sin to come into our hearts, which leads us to more sin, including insulting and name-calling, and at times even physical harm. Although this may seem insignificant to us, it's not insignificant to God, and it matters to God. So, firstly, anger can be evil. Secondly, we must see that anger can be reconciled. Let's look at verses 23 and 24 again. So if you're offering your gift on the altar, and there you remember that your brother or sister has something against you, leave your gift there in front of the altar. First go and be reconciled with your brother or sister, and then come and offer your gift. There is hope and even an expectation that anger can be worked out between others. Jesus believes so highly in this that he actually instructs us to pause our worship of God in order for us to make things right between us and someone else. And when Jesus says your brother or your sister, he doesn't mean only your literal brother or sister. He means basically other people whom we interact with. It's not always easy to make things right with someone, but we should keep trying because it is important to God, and if it's important to God, it's important to us. Notice that Jesus also doesn't say anything about who's in the right and who's in the wrong. When it comes to imperfection and sinfulness, we're all wrong. And we need his forgiveness and his righteousness, which should lead us to pursue forgiveness and righteousness in our relationships with others. Anger can be evil. Anger can be reconciled. And finally, anger can have consequences. Verse 25 to 26. Reach a settlement quickly with your adversary while you're on the way with him to the court, or your adversary will hand you over to the judgment, and the judge to the officer, and you will be thrown into prison. Truly I tell you, you will never get out of there until you have paid the last penny. What Jesus is getting at in verse 25 and 26 is that it is always better to work things out with someone without going before a judge, whether a human judge or God the holy judge. A judge will examine us to see if there is guilt within us, and if so, we will be punished. It's always easier to make things right yourself with someone else before a judge has to do so. Let's say, for example, that you're on a sports team and you have a disagreement with another team member. If you take care of it yourselves and work it out, your coach or your teacher may not even know about it. However, if you don't work it out and things get bad, and you have to go to a coach or a teacher, things could get ugly, and it might even lead you to getting into trouble. And the same can be true for family relationships, relationships in the workplace, and certainly relationships in the church. And it's always easier for people to work things out in humility and love rather than have to take it to the next level. Avoid anger, seek to make things right, and seek to do so as soon as possible so things don't get worse. We should deal with our anger before God deals with our anger. Anger can be good. It's an emotion that God has created in us. It can warn us if something isn't right or if we're being mistreated. But not kept in check, anger can lead to sin, and that separates us from other humans and can also separate us from God. We must go to God through Jesus and repent of our anger. and Jesus can set us free from any sin.